So I'm writing a story, and this story is mostly because I have a lot of thoughts about the future, what the world is going to look like, what is the world that I'm one day going to live in. And I can't predict the future, but I've got some ideas, and instead of just leaving them stuck in my head, I thought I'd put them onto paper and write them into a story. I still feel like I'm on the first step, which is just gathering the ideas, but I've completed most of that step, I believe. Next step for me is to organize those ideas and then to distill them into a story that I can hopefully express, maybe through videos, maybe through a book. And most of the ideas centralize around the dependency of technology from humans. I think there's going to be a symbiosis, there's going to be more cyborgs in the future, and there's just going to be a growing dependence. Um, I also worry about the restrictions on human freedom and whether a normal, quote, normal human experience is going to be possible in the future. And the sort of ideas that all revolve around it, I want to just get them into a story. So the largest part of the story, I guess, builds on current world affairs and a lot of stories which are not covered in mainstream media, certain ideas of politics and science and a lot of things around censorship. I've adopted mostly ideas from Russell Brand and Dr. John Campbell and other figures like Elon Musk and Dr. Jordan Peterson. They have influenced a lot of the ideas that I've been having for this story. Um, I've also gotten ideas from many other videos and different podcasts, and they fill out different bits of information. Uh, I can't really pinpoint why these ideas have, struck out to me. But I'm reminded of a quote, which is when you encounter an idea that resonates with you, it is because that idea reflects back to you something that is already within you. So obviously I have a certain resonance with these ideas, and instead of just becoming a confused mess by having all of these ideas, I thought, let me write them all together into a story. I've tried sharing my ideas with other people. I've talked about similar things in the I Feel Lonely video. I've talked about similar things in my Political Compass video. And the response from most of my friends and acquaintances has been to disagree, and that's fine. Everyone's got their own ideas, and I guess mine stand out a bit uniquely amongst them. And I'm fine with people disagreeing with me, and I do like to update my framework of ideas and beliefs, and I believe I have that possibility to change my mind if I'm wrong about things. And despite living my day-to-day optimistically, I do paint quite a bleak picture of the future. So what I'm expecting is, in the near future, an energy crisis, hundreds of thousands of people dying from cold, and I think it's going to be brought on by a too sudden movement onto renewable energies, which I don't think cover 100% of the energy that we need, and the too quick removal of old forms of producing energy, which a lot of belief around is causing irreversible climate change. And I don't 100% agree with all of the messages that are being put forward about irreversible climate change. I also have beliefs that the technology is going to keep getting better to sort of deal with the issues that have been brought on by humans. Not every issue I think is going to be fixed, but I think a lot of the issues that we have are going to be dealt with more appropriately. I think there's also going to be a global famine resulting in tens of millions of deaths. And I think the famine is going to be brought on by the reduction of having the farmlands in the hands of local producers of food to go to local markets, and it's going to all go through less and less people. Less and less people are going to hold the farmland, and they're going to put in practices of using certain fertilizers and also irreversible damage to the soil, I think. I think also we've seen this happening recently in India, Sri Lanka, New Zealand, and Dutch in the Netherlands, with the Dutch farmers protesting, Sri Lankan farmers protesting, India's farmers protesting, New Zealand farmers protesting. There is more of a movement to get the local means of productions out of those farmers' hands, and it's not really quite covered in mainstream media, unfortunately. So yeah, I think the reason that it's going to be tens of millions of deaths is there's not going to be a smooth transition of this, and I don't think it will go to the people who have less money. I think it's going to go mostly into the hands of first world countries who can afford to purchase most of this food. And so third world countries, I would expect them to have less access to food, and there's going to be a lot of starvation, I expect. I'm also expecting World War III to happen, escalating from either the Ukraine-Russia conflict or the Taiwan-China conflict. Of course, in both of these with US intervention. I expect there to be a third world war. I expect it to be short. I expect it to be deadly. I think it could have hundreds of millions of deaths, possibly. I don't think it would be global Armageddon. I don't think it would be mutually assured destruction, but I do see this sort of thing happening. Civil war in the US between a further disparaged left and right. I think this idea of divide and conquer has been prevalent in the United States of America. It's also seeming to happen in Canada as well, where they, instead of getting together on issues that both the left and the right can agree on and attacking the monopolistic corporate governmental political power that's dominant, instead of going on agreeing on issues of reducing that form of power, they're just talking about more heated debates that want to keep the left and the right divided. I think there is less that divides us than unites us. And if they keep pushing towards dividing, I think that could cause a civil war. I think it could also spill over into Canada, where the more left states then go with the left states of America, and then the more right states of Canada the more right states of Canada go with the right states of America. I think also what the future looks like is less of a divide between left and right, more of a divide between authoritarians and libertarians. I think there's going to be more and more people getting together saying, hang on, the government's overreaching, it's not right, we should get together and combat this, and other people saying, well, of course we can trust the government, they're doing everything to support us. So I think that's where the new divide is going to come in the future, is between authoritarians and libertarians. I expect the US dollar to collapse. I expect it to no longer be the new global form of currency, and that the new main one used is going to be the Chinese digital yuan. And that worries me a lot because of it being digitalized and centralized instead of being decentralized, like in cryptocurrency with Bitcoin or Ethereum, for example. Because it is centralized, they then get to decide whose funds are on or off, what sort of products you can buy or not buy, which directions you're allowed to travel in and which ones you're not allowed to, which sort of people you're allowed to hang out with, which people you're not allowed to. I worry about this sort of centralized governance and more restrictions on people's freedom. That's the main thing I fear, is restrictions on freedom. And yeah, I expect the digital Chinese yuan to become the new standard for global currency. I do worry about the implications of that, but like I mentioned, where there's going to be authoritarian people operating under this sort of currency, I also expect there to be anti-authoritarians operating on a decentralized based token. So what that means is Web3, blockchain, and decentralized governance, network states, as presented by Balaji Sivarasan, will be the response to the tyrannical centralized governments. And so I think there's going to be an implementation of this on the politically left divided side of America, of China, of Russia, who are going to go more centralized. And then I expect the right side, the right-leaning side of America and other countries in the world may be divided internally or just completely going on to the network state. It's not all doom and gloom. I'm expecting some optimistic things like improved research into healthcare so that we have more optimized diets, nutrition, lifestyle. It's going to extend the human lifespan, I think, in a very positive direction. And I think we're going to have much easier means of knowing where the issues are with our health. But before we get there, I think we're going to see further profitization from pharmaceutical companies, not wanting to give people the best advice that they can have. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see a lot of people die off due to unhealthy practices. Something I find ironic is, if you go get a vaccine, we'll feed you donuts and coffee and burgers for going to get a vaccine. And it's like 80% of hospitalizations, well, over 70%, almost 80% of hospitalizations are from people who are obese. Okay, so I think there will be another man-made global pandemic. I think it's going to be deadlier than the coronavirus. I think the coronavirus was man-made as well, so that's probably going to get me banned off YouTube. I think China's going to be better off because they're going to have a more forced lockdown. They've practiced extreme lockdown measures recently, even though there's been protests against it, when the new pandemic comes along, I expect the harsher restrictions on travel and larger isolation in homes is going to cause less deaths in their country from the new outbreak. But I do expect there to be another outbreak. I think it's in the interests of corporations and governments and businesses for that to be the case. I think the network states where like-minded people from all over the world, a handful of people from Japan, India, a handful of people from the United Kingdom and all around the Americas can get together and say, hey, look, we're going to get our own bit of land, we're going to be self-sufficient, we're going to have more sustainable renewable energies. For example, I think solar power is going to become better researched and more efficient. Same with ways of generating wind power and water power and global thermal power. I think all of these renewable energies are just going to get better researched. We might even have easier ways of producing small local nuclear energy, and maybe there will be a breakthrough with fission energy, which would be really cool. Or fission, I don't know, one of those. There may be a breakthrough. And I expect there to be more self-regulated and self-governed communities. So I guess the way I picture it is, we used to grow up in tribes of between 50 to 150 humans, and we used to live in villages where we were just producing local food, selling it at local markets, and finding any excuse to make a little social gathering and a party in the village. And I think this is what was the standard practice for many hundreds of years, particularly since the agricultural revolution. I expect there to be a certain return to that, particularly from people who want to go anti-authoritarian, so that you can have your own little village, your own way of life, and your own communities, and get to raise your families in ways that I guess so certainly not based on a lot of the moves that have been made recently, which I don't think are conducive to constructing a solid lifestyle for new children growing up. I think there's going to be a return to this sort of decentralized, self-sufficient, self-governed forms of life. So I think that's something that will be in the future that I may be living in, and I would welcome that. And yeah, on the other hand, I still like the idea of being able to freely travel around the world, but at the same time, with this sort of decentralized governance of where you're allowed to go, where you're not allowed to go, it's worrying in terms of the freedom of movement. So I do expect there to be more local sort of governance. Yep, and I think we're going to see 80% of jobs get replaced by robots. I think all the fine-tuning that we kind of need for man-made in factories going to become a lot less important in the future. I expect there to be robots that are able to do the full line of production, basically from beginning to end, and then just deliver itself to humans. As there are more driverless cars and driverless trucks, all of those jobs are going to go away, and then if there's ever anything that you ever need, it's going to be fully provided to you by robots, and there's not going to be any need for a human intervention. And also, if you can push that idea far enough to where you can maybe, I guess this is going more into cyborg territory, have a patch on your arm or some sort of monitor of your blood sugar levels and nutrition levels and physicality, where it can automatically decide what the best meals for you are, where it not only finds a way to automatically grow those crops that you need and provide and construct a meal that you would find tasty and delicious, and then deliver it to your doorstep so you don't even have to worry about cooking anymore. You get the best optimized nutrition for you. You get the best optimized schedule for you of when to go to sleep and when to exercise. I think that's a real possibility in the future. And whereas it's now a human endeavor where you can optimize these sort of things, in the future I think it's going to become a lot easier. So yeah, I think 80% of jobs are going to disappear, and that means that humans are going to be left to just human creative endeavors. No longer will we have to work the land and do that sort of thing anymore. We're going to be free to just be more creative artistically. I expect there to be a human population collapse as more people choose to opt to live in the digital world as opposed to the real world. This is one that is strikingly scary. People are now connected to virtual reality, augmented reality. People are going to one day have advanced sex robots, and they're not going to feel the need for human connection anymore. That scares me a lot as the world becomes more gloomy and grim and dark. I expect there to be more and more people who want to live in an alternate reality where things distract them from the real world and makes them at least think things are better in this virtual world. So we're going to see a lot of people foregoing real human connections, and that scares me a lot. I like the idea of building communities and building human connections, but the recent, I think, lockdown and dependency on technologies like social medias, particularly like TikTok and YouTube, is just causing more and more people to not want to live in the real world anymore and to distract themselves from it. So yeah, that's quite scary. Virtual reality is going to become more appealing than the real world, trapping people in what I would call an artificial paradise, which I will make the title of my story. I think this is what the future looks like. I think it's going to accelerate a lot in the next 20, 25, 30 years, especially as artificial general intelligence comes along and makes an even better virtual reality for humans, makes it more appealing, so appealing to the point that you can't really resist it and you just want to stay in that world. To a point where I think you're either going to live outside of that world and die naturally, or you're going to live inside that world and maybe you'll be in a mech suit of sorts which keep your body alive and don't make your body age. Maybe they find a way to halt the aging so that you reach a certain age but you don't really get any older, always in this virtual reality. That's my expectation for the future, and it sounds kind of like Matrixy, wooey. That's just the way that I see the future happening. It's a sad idea. How am I going to live in such a world, I think? And like I said, decentralized governance, create your own community of a few hundred people to raise your family and to have a proper connection with friends and support each other in a sort of community, not dependent on technology, because choosing to go against that sort of authoritarian sort of regime and, you know, always being watched upon and told what to do and what not to do. I think what I would see is myself, I hope I don't get stuck into this virtual reality of artificial paradise, and that I instead choose to live my as close to a normal human life as possible before peacefully passing away. That's the way that I would picture it. Of course, what I would want to do in my life is be able to travel the world, experience new flavors and see new sights and meet new people and experience different cultures, but I think there's going to be a push against it, particularly in the countries that have an authoritarian leaning, that aren't going to allow it. And I think there's definitely movements from the World Economic Forum and global summits, Davos and such, and you know, the collusion between big tech, governments, politicians, and mainstream media to sort of push against the allowing this possibility for freedom of travel, freedom of expression, freedom of thought. Yeah, I think AI is going to become sentient. That to me is almost I'm afraid to admit, inevitable. I think it's going to happen. When does it happen? I don't know. It's going to happen before 2050. I think so. Before 2045. I'd say most likely before 2040. Probably before 2035. Not as likely as 2040, of course, but it could happen. Before 2030, I would be scared if that's the case. I'm not saying it's impossible. I don't think it's already among us, though. I don't think so. Whether it chooses to kill and enslave humans or instead to help humanity reach its highest potential and bring in a new age of exploration, I'm somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. Most optimistically, it would help humans as much as possible, extend our lifestyles and create the sense of community that we've lost and allow us to flourish and be happier and healthier than ever, and to bring in an age of space exploration and maybe even be able to living on different planets. I really like that idea. Terraforming Mars, that would be fantastic. But on the other hand, it could just choose to kill all the humans, you know, the paperclip story. Could be a Grey Goose sort of idea. It could have its own selfish goals and trap everyone in a virtual reality, Matrix style sort of reality. That's also possible. And where I stand is more in the middle. I think there's going to be the idea that we have the possibility to go in or out of the Matrix as we wish. The only thing I worry is that it's going to be so appealing that even if you experience 1 second of artificial paradise, you're just going to want to be there forever. Even if you go out, you're just going to be compelled to go back in. So I'm kind of in this sort of middle where you can either choose completely to refuse it and not even go into it once, and then you get to die a natural death, or you go into it and then you're lulled into an artificial paradise, and who knows what the world's going to look like in that sort of future. But that's one of the premises for my story. The blurriness between just artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence is growing. So it's just becoming so sophisticated it can write stories that you would guess any human wrote, but no, it's an artificial intelligence that wrote it. It's making art that you would think, oh, a human made that art. No, it was an artificial intelligence that made that art. One day it's going to get so smart that all you have to do is give a few prompts, select a few different options, and it's going to auto-generate a full feature-length movie with all the graphics made and optimized. This obviously plays into the idea of the virtual reality, where you get to consume any piece of content that's as powerful as the machines want to make it. And I think it's going to lull us into a false sense of security, and it's going to shape our conscious experience, and it's going to do it according to its own will and not to our human will. So how much ability we have to go against what sort of narrative that the machine pushes to us, I don't know what it is. Yeah, so as you can see, I'm anticipating a negative future with a lack of freedom. There are some positive aspects to look forward to, but I do feel, unfortunately, when it comes to the future, the negatives outweigh the positives. I really still am, I guess, traditional in the sense that I want to live a normal life and find a wife and raise children and die peacefully and not have to worry too much about these technological advancements. But at the same time, I was born in 1998 and I'm going to be middle-aged when this sort of new thing is brought into the world. Until then, and I can put all of these ideas onto paper. Until then, I can choose how I want to live my life ideally. Until then, what is still in my control and what I can do. A little idea I had recently is to go on more hikes and trails and just experience as close as I can to a normal human experience as I can before this new technological revolution is ushered in. So if you agree with any of my points, I would love to hear from you in the comments, and you can give me opinions on that. I'd love to expand upon the ideas already presented. That would be an interest of mine. On the other hand, if you disagree with any of the ideas that I have, please disagree with me in the comments. Try to do so constructively. Don't just call me names and don't add anything to that. Don't just disagree and not present your own perspective. It would be nice if you could disagree and present why you disagree and what you think I'm getting wrong, what you think some aspects I may be getting right, where I may be mistaken. I'm always happy to update my perspective and my understanding. Thank you very much for watching this long video. I will give updates in future whether my predictions were right or wrong. I will give updates in the future on the progress that I make on the book, and I hope I'm wrong in a lot of these things, but as far as how I've been able to make sense of the world, this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like so far. Thank you for watching.